how is your career looking so far? What are your plans for this year? Have you ever thought about what the next steps are in your career? If you're wondering if you have already reached the top, the best, the most fulfilling, the happiest, the strongest, let's say, level in your career, well, then this life is not for you. But I know so many people who deeply, like intuitively know that they're happy, they're content, but there's just this one thing, this secret or this person or just something that stands in their way towards where they want to be career-wise. And a lot of people approach me with questions related to their career and career growth. But guess what? I'm not the expert on that. My expertise is LinkedIn. That's why I invited an amazing guest today, Erin Urban. Who is Erin? For anybody who didn't hear about her, shame on you. Erin is a career growth strategist and executive coach, a speaker and author, and a Forbes Coaches Council member, and somebody who just published a book, and somebody who's obsessed with helping you to get your career to the next level. So Erin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Natalia. I am thrilled to talk to you about how to elevate your career and get those real results that people are looking for. And you mentioned it, you hit the nail on the head. We oftentimes suffer from what I call open door syndrome, right?
Okay.
We start our career, we have these aspirations, and we kind of follow one door and another door opens, we go through that door, and then suddenly one day we wake up and we look around and go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is not what I really want to do. I don't feel like I'm growing the way I want, or maybe I'm not achieving that goal. I've done all the right things, right? I've done all the right things, but I'm not getting anywhere. And I feel kind of stuck, a little frustrated, and people reach out to me and they go, well, what do I do next? How do I get from where I am to where I want to go? Or where do I even want to go? Which is a big one, find that clarity before we design our career action plan.
Very, very well said. Before we deep dive into your story and into how your career unfolded over the years, I would like to say hello to everybody who already joined. And I would like to know who's in the house, who's here, who's listening, where are you from, which city, which continent. Don't be shy. Share with us from where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions, this show is for you. There are no stupid questions. If you have anything that you would like to share, anything where you need feedback on, any big riddle or question mark that is bothering you, especially when it comes to your career and career growth, then simply post it into the comments or comment, and I'll make sure that Erin will answer this question for you. So we already have Dylan, and we have Libero, and we have Ali, we have Emily who's here, we have Jeremiah and Ebony and Mohammed and Jason. Thank you so much. And Ricardo from Mexico City. So Erin, tell us a little bit about your career and your story. Did you always do what you did? As a kid, did you one day when the teacher asked you, what do you want to do? You thought about it and you said, yeah, I want to help people with their careers and I will focus on career growth. And since the day you said it until today, it was just genius. It was flawless. This was exactly what you always wanted to do. And you just beautifully worked yourself up or danced yourself through your beautiful life and your career.
That's so funny. And a lot of people, particularly young emerging professionals, I think they firmly believe that's how it should happen. And in fact, that's really not how it happens at all. Actually, I started my career as an architect and designer. Yep. I put over 875 homes in the ground, and I also managed and designed over 3 million square feet of office space. So I jokingly say, well, I transitioned from being the architect of people's environments to being the architect of people's careers. So it's been a long journey since, and I've transitioned my career 4 times. 4 times, not once, not twice,
Yeah.
but 4 times during that time. And it's been a wonderful evolutionary journey. And as I look back over my career, there's every single step has laid the foundation for the next step. And I will say that there was a few times where I had the opportunity to pause and reflect and go, is this really what I want to do? And one time in particular that I got a swift kick in the rear and a wake-up call.
Tell us about it.
It's what I call my career pivot. So as a project manager, many years after my architectural days, I transitioned into project management commercial full-time. And I had done all the right things, right? I had the education, the certifications. I worked really hard. I tried to be the absolute best at what I did. I stayed late. I came on the weekends. I was there Friday evenings when everybody else had gone home. I was acknowledged as probably one of the hardest working project managers. In fact, if they had something wrong, they usually called me in to fix it. The problem was I wasn't getting anywhere. I want to move into leadership, and that was just not happening. One fine spring day, I walked into my performance review, and I found, the usual story. Oh, we've done really well, yada, yada. However, we have some concerns. Those are not words you want to hear in your performance review.
Yeah, for sure not. It's like, okay.
So my definition of self was shocked a little bit. I got information that my fellow coworkers did not see me as approachable. I was not easy to work with. And it wasn't that I was a mean, terrible project manager. It's just I was very driven, very get it done personality, very metrics driven, what's next, right? I didn't come to work to make friends. I was very professional. And at the end of the day, looking back at it now, I was performing to the wrong metric. And it's not to say that I should do a bad job. It's just to say that I had ignored a major component of my career success. And that is my interpersonal skills were lacking in the office. It's great outside the office with clients, but not so good inside the office. Very business minded. And I would like to say that I woke up and saw the light of day immediately and changed my ways in that week, but that's not that's not how it works at all. So after kicking my feet around and feeling very sorry for myself for a couple of weeks, I had the intervention of a mentor who saw a lot more potential in me, perhaps than I saw, and helped me basically transform who I presented myself as. So what's interesting is, Natalia, you focus a lot on branding, right? Particularly when it comes to LinkedIn. What is our brand? What are we communicating to the world at large? Well, sometimes the brand that we think we're communicating is not what's actually being communicated. And even though my intent was good, my actions didn't necessarily align. I had to make sure that I was more intentional with that. To make a long story short, 9 months later, like a pregnancy, I gave birth to a new me, and I accepted a leadership position, a very influential leadership position.
Okay.
And what's interesting is I used to be known as the steamroller.
Ouch.
So I transitioned from steamroller to a leadership position in 9 months.
That's impressive. I mean, that must have been deep and painful, and very likely you learned a lot about things, like a lot of things about yourself that you didn't want to hear. You accepted them, you evolved. So I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you needed to work on certain aspects of your personality or your character in order to express yourself in a new way, and in order to match the own perception and the perception or the outside reality, that the way how people actually perceived you, correct?
Right. I need to make an alignment with the inside and the outside. The outside and the inside need to be the same. And oftentimes we have two different personas, who we are on the inside and the the persona people perceive. What's interesting though, it wasn't deep and painful. I mean, it was certainly painful to hear that I wasn't quite the person I thought I was to other people. That was a harsh awakening. However, it was actually quite freeing.
Okay.
Yeah, because oftentimes when I'm working with my clients, what I find is their performance, their behaviors, the habits they develop are based on metrics that are oftentimes not true, right? They're not helpful, they're not useful, they're baggage, and it precipitates the types of habits that do not serve them, so they can show up 100% as their true authentic self in a wonderful way in the workplace. And that was not happening. These habits were actually getting in my way. I thought I should be super professional because that's what you did to get ahead. And it's not that I should show up into work in my pajamas, although we do that occasionally right now.
Especially nowadays. Exactly. We are.
Yeah, as long as we're dressed from here up, we're fine. But irregardless, it was getting in the way of me being authentically me and relaxing into who I was. And when I started shifting my focus, how I communicated, how I saw people instead of positions as people, trying to get to know them as people and valuing people and focusing slightly different on how I communicated and how I saw and perceived the world around me, particularly in careers. I mean, it made the world a difference. I had people walk up to me. I mean, keep in mind, these are people who've been working for me or with me for some time.
Yeah.
Like, you're so different.
You
know, I like it. Kind of like,
it's like,
say that, like it was implied. Like, it's really nice. And what was interesting is I was afraid, oh, well, my idea of getting things done was to lean harder on people. I was worried that they wouldn't produce. As a project manager, you need to get things done. And oftentimes from people who don't report directly to you. But actually, they started working with me, giving me information well before I asked for it.
Interesting.
That was easier to get along with. Shock and surprise there, right?
Yeah, no, but that's amazing because that beautifully brings us into a topic that is very close to my heart: career myths. So when you study, or when you're in the final years of school or whatever, college, people paint a picture of a career or how you need to behave or how a career works. And you, as a naive graduate, or somebody who's still in the school system or the educational system, and then there's the job market, is a total different, what is it? It's a different world. It's a logic that you can read everything about it. Unless you are in it, it doesn't make sense. And it's, again, so different from any theory book that you've read. So what are some of the most common career myths that people still believe that are either totally from the 1970s or 80s, or that are just terribly wrong because, I don't know, maybe they are reinforced in certain Hollywood blockbusters or in jokes or whatever? So share a handful of these career myths or BS or nonsense with us that totally messes with our perception of what a career is and how to get to the next level.
That's great. So oftentimes these career myths, as you mentioned, these assumptions of what gets us from where we are to where we want to go, sabotage us. And I'll give you a great example. You mentioned, when you're working in your college and developing, your persona, your education, your expertise at the college level and getting ready to emerge into the workplace, just by the nature of how our educational systems are developed, we are brainwashed. Our mindset is set on focusing on IQ over EQ. Now, what is EQ or EI? That's emotional intelligence or your emotional quotient. And what that is how you interact, handle situations, and a host of other factors I won't get into right now. But what's interesting is research has shown that those professionals and individuals who have higher EQ or EI actually perform much better and much more successful in the workplace overall and in their lives than those people who have more IQ versus EQ or EI, if that makes sense. And
Wow.
what happened here is it doesn't, and I see it, I see people who graduate the top of my class and they're still at home with mom and dad in their 40s. So,
Yep.
they suffer bad relationships. They made bad choices. They didn't, see the quote unquote writing on the wall, as we like to say in America. Didn't see things coming that they should have seen or read the room. They struggle in certain social situations because they hadn't focused on interacting, developing relationships. They really focused on numbers, metrics, making A's, da 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 da.
Mm.
And that precipitates that behavior moves into the workplace, and it doesn't help you. And there's a lot of really, really smart people who are also great with building relationships, and that's the perfect match. But instead of relying so much on, your certifications and credentials and, all these initials after your name, being Mr. and Mrs. Alphabet,
I love them.
relationships and your network. Your connections are your career currency.
Oh, big one. Everybody listen to that and tattoo it into your self-consciousness. Can you repeat that again, please, Erin?
Your connections are your career currency.
Boom.
Yes.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's so true. So we talked about the beginning of a career. Let's take somebody who's, let's say, in the middle of his or her career. That means, what is it? Maybe mid-30s and 40s. What kind of myths or misperceptions or fears, lame excuses do you hear, let's say, in that age bracket?
What I see most common, honestly, Dr. Natalia, is overcommitting and overworking.
Oh,
so
okay.
thinking that one's hard work will speak for itself. No,
nice.
In fact, your hard work does not speak for itself. You do. And oftentimes what we do is we work super hard. We're relying on that hard work to say to the world at large, I want to move up, without communicating that succinctly.
Okay.
Actually communicating that to your network or those people who you work for with. You're not communicating your goals. You're just hoping people will notice. Well, how do you know that they don't think you just like working really hard? I'll give you an example.
Good one.
One of my clients, when we first started working together, she had just gotten a new job. She's very excited. She was like, Erin, you'll be so proud of me. And I was like, of course I'm proud of you. She goes, I just started and a couple people quit that were like her peers and one superior. And I stepped to the plate and I took on all of their work.
Why?
Right. I said, well, are they paying you more for that?
Yeah. No.
Well, my boss is really proud of me. I bet he is, because it's getting work.
Yeah, you're saving costs. Fantastic.
What are you doing? And so I worked with her through the coaching conversation, to see how she could take positive action that worked with the company culture to start that conversation and or reduce the workload, right? Because she was working all the time. And I'm really proud. Well, yeah, you haven't died yet. So
yeah, exactly. You didn't have a heart attack or a burnout. Fantastic.
Right. And it's just, we have this, particularly in America, this work hard, play hard ethic. And what I really see is we're just working hard.
Yeah, because there is no time for play. When it's playtime, you're so exhausted, you just fall into bed.
Yeah. Yep. In actuality, and it's true also for entrepreneurs. I had a lady ask me, she goes, well, what is one of the things that's made you successful as an entrepreneur? I said, well, while the work hard, true grit is all great and well, honestly, the most successful entrepreneurs have a very healthy work-life balance. And it's not all about working harder. It's about working smarter, leveraging your networks, and building in that freedom so you can be fulfilled in your life. Because honestly, your career is not, we live to work. And that's we got that backwards. We should be working to live.
Yeah. But it's, as you said, it's hyped on social media. It's glorified in movies and in books. So no surprises there. What about people, let's say, in their 50s and maybe, like people in their 50s? Do you see special myths or challenges or lame excuses at that stage where people say career growth now? What are you talking about, Erin? What are you talking about?
Oh, career growth is completely accessible. I work with people in their mid 50s and 60s who are actually thinking about relaunching, right? They are at the point where I laughingly say the more candles you get on your birthday cake, the less likely it is you want to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah, because life is too short. You see it.
You're like, you know what you want, you know what you don't want, and you kind of know who you are mostly at that point. And it's still important to know, okay, based on where you want to go with whatever the next move is for you, make sure it's at the interest of your strengths, interest, and expertise. Because no one who works with me, particularly in career pivots or career shifts, no one has to start all over again. We leverage your existing skill set and your strengths and focus on your interest. Because we spend most of our time at work, why do something we don't want to do? But what I oftentimes see that hamstrings people, particularly as they move up into senior level roles and they get more experience, more candles on the birthday cake, is the reliance on said experience. Well, I've worked here this long, I should.
Who said should?
Yeah.
What should?
It's
Stop shooting on yourself.
Stop shooting on yourself, right? Stop shooting on yourself. I love that.
I learned that term, I think, a year ago. I think it was Thomas who said it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that also brings me to a question that somebody asked this morning. But before that, I want to reach out to the audience once again. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to know from Erin, again, don't be shy. Type your question in right now and I'll make sure that we get it answered. So something that I think Joanna wanted to know was transitioning from one industry into another. A lot of people say that's kind of like the death of your career and it's so difficult or it's impossible, or people might look at your Vita or CV and say, yeah, that's a person who just can't decide, or like, seriously, what kind of an expert are you? So what do you say to such people?
So one, let go of that dependence upon your career path. Let it go. Let go of that which does not serve you so you can move forward. And number two, identify where you want to go. Before I work with anybody when it comes to career transitions, pivots, etc., we need to define and have clarity around where you want to go. Because just like a good GPS system, we don't start where we are and try to go forward to design a great career action plan for you. It's understanding where you want to go and then mapping it from there. Reverse engineer. That is so important. So if you are thinking about making a career shift, one, woohoo, good for you. Go for it and understand what is it you want to do. Get some examples of those ideal target job descriptions. So you're reading the job descriptions and you think, oh, yeah, I can do that. Well, if it lights you up, and you think that you have some expertise, transferable skills in that area, get those job descriptions, analyze them. What do they ask for? Roles, responsibilities, certifications, credentials, etc. What do you see? And what can you check the box on when it comes to the contributions you already have? Now know this, when it comes to transitioning your career, I highly recommend you make those transferable skills obvious to the reader, whether that be on LinkedIn or your resume, because they will not infer that because you've done this, it also means this. We have to make it obvious for them and spell it out. I've done this, which is highly transferable or relates to or is similar to blah, 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 right?
No,
also,
absolutely.
Yeah, developing those contributions based on where you want to go. And yes, you need to have contributions and accomplishments, not just roles and responsibilities, is really important. And you also know, okay, what do I need to bridge a gap if there is one? Maybe that is a certification or class or what have you. And those are relatively easy to obtain. I will say, though, that getting the PMP is very dry read.
Yeah, but if this is a must, I mean, as you said, you work with what you have, you ask yourself what is actually needed, work on these things, acquire them, and then tell a story from a different perspective, and actually share and explain and bring those things together. I think a lot of people, they assume that things are obvious, but a lot of people also believe that we can look into their mind or into their head, or just by the way how they say something, totally understand how they feel or why they do what they do. Guess what? That's not the reality of life. We have a question that came in from Sebastian. He wants to know, how did you argue communicate to be ready for a leadership position without having experience?
Great question, Sebastian. First of all, I didn't have to argue.
You
Communicating so this is what I did. Once I had worked on myself and had, let's say, shifted my brand, so shifted my perception. There's a lot of talk around executive presence, and that's basically what I was working on. My presence. How do you show up to other people? Now, I don't say that to mean that one should be overly obsessed about how other people think about you, but being cognizant of that is also very important. So once I had done that and developed that presence, the brand I wanted to be, I actually took a risk. There was an opening for the VP of operations role at the company I was with, and I knew there was not a chance I would get it, because not only was it was several leaps up, but I did know that I would, as a courtesy, receive interviews from key decision makers. So during those interviews, I actually got to interview with the CEO. Rather, not a very large company, okay? It wasn't a multinational company, but it was, an opportunity to talk to someone who made a lot of difference. And he nicely asked me, basically, why did you bother?
Yeah, exactly.
Interview for this role. And I was like, well, great question. And I know that, I am not probably the best fit for this role. Actually, there is someone else who's a great candidate for this role. And if I did not put myself out here and talk to you and share what my expertise and abilities are and what I'm excited to do and add value to at this company, no one would be the wiser. You only know me for what I do. You're not aware of what I can do. And he's like, oh, really? Well, what do you want to do?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I shared how I was excited to add value to the company, how I could see I could help transform and increase, the interactions and reduce waste. At that time, I was moving into continuous improvement as a Lean Six Sigma black belt. So he said, well, that's wonderful. And by the way, good for you for taking that risk and applying for this job. And not too much longer after that, they made a role for me.
There you go. A beautiful success story. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, take the risk. It's totally worth it. Absolutely. And we have to communicate what we want to do and how you want to add value. That's very important.
Absolutely. I think we also had an earlier question here that focuses on a job start. Please say something as a fresher. They can't get a job in this critical situation. Thank you. So I assume that MD, which most probably stands for Mohammed, is starting out, most probably leaving school or university or college, and we're living in 2021 right now. Maybe not the easiest situation for a job start. What would you recommend, Erin?
Well, first of all, I come back to those career accomplishments I mentioned earlier. And even though perhaps you don't have a lot of on-the-job experience, you probably do have some experiences and some things to talk about when it comes to how you have skills and some expertise, even beginning expertise, in the types of roles you want to achieve and gain. So I highly recommend sharing those, whether those be on special projects, internships, side work, etc. And I recommend sharing that in your resume up front on the first page. Because it's likely that most recruiters will not read very far into your resume. Most only read the first half of the first page as a screen once you make it through applicant tracking systems. I know in the US, we are very heavy on ATS or applicant tracking systems. So once you make it past that, you definitely want to clearly state how you've contributed, what value you have to bring. And that's it. That's the name of the game for emerging professionals. It's pulling together any and all expertise, skills, accomplishments, etc., and from anything, project work, school work, internships, volunteer work.
I just wanted to say volunteer work, student engagement. Yeah, absolutely. That also beautifully fits to Tanvi's question. If you have experience but not certification, how do you portray that when there are so many competing with certifications? Because it seems easier for those with these certifications.
Well, yes and no. And I'll say this. I actually had a client reach out to me shortly after he received his new resume, a shiny new resume, a shiny new LinkedIn profile, and all that great stuff. And he said, Erins, I'm applying for this job. There's like 600 people applying. Should I bother? I said, okay, time out. Scott, here's the deal. Yes, you should apply, and here's why. Well, those people who are applying, a vast majority of them are not even qualified. And a vast majority of that, and even more people, will not even make it through applicant tracking systems because they do not know how to target their documents based on where they want to go. So that's the first thing. Even if you're pivoting or you're not pivoting, it doesn't matter. You need to target your documents based on where you want to go. Leverage your ideal jobs, okay? Mm-hmm. Use those to help you develop those career contribution stories. Those people with certifications, good for them. I know lots of people with certifications that have little to no experience. If you have lots of experience, I'm willing to bet that you have accomplishment stories that you can bring into your documents and highlight that, particularly with results and impact and outcomes. Results-driven resumes get people seen well before people with certifications because decision makers are spending money to get you on board. They want to know what their ROI is for hiring you.
Absolutely. So don't write, I'm an ambitious individual who loves to create great results. Tell me, share a story with me in which I can see you are ambitious and you have created a concrete, tangible result. Right?
Give examples.
Yeah,
they want to see examples. And for those of you who are project oriented, I highly recommend developing what I call a project addendum. This is something that's a document lives with you throughout your life. And for those of you who are not project oriented, develop an impact inventory. It's a document that develops and evolves throughout your professional life. Continually add to it, accolades, things that you've done, special projects, wins, results. Think of it in terms of what was the pain I solved? So what was the goal or what was going on? High level detail, important things like budget, who was involved, key stakeholders, timelines, etc. Then what was the impact? Why did it matter? What was the results of your work? Even if it was, I don't know, streamlining your own process, it doesn't matter. It probably still saved time and energy and overhead for your company. So keep a running list of that. And this is super useful for if you're thinking about a career transition, performance review times, salary negotiation. You want a promotion. They want to see backup. So why you're a good candidate.
Yeah, 100%. Then we also have another question that is more of advice. I'm currently a sales executive, but the opportunity I have right now is to study in human resource. Is it advisable to continue, though it's a career switch?
I would say it's up to you and how much transferable skills you feel like you have and the story you can tell, okay? And also, if you have no transferable skills, if you have no career story that you can transition into this new pivot, ask yourself, very honestly, are you okay with starting over? Because that's the challenge, is if you cannot leverage any existing skill sets, you need to be okay with starting relatively lower than perhaps where you are now. Most of my clients, typically, we will take what I call a transition step. So sometimes your next best step is just a step in the right direction, and maybe not that ultimate end game, right? But it's a transition step that allows you to gain more expertise, get the skills you need, make the right connections, so you can move into the role you want.
What is I think you called it missing link, or what is what it matters most when it comes to the professional success of individuals? So we talked about the power of personal branding and articulating who you are, what you stand for, and what you want. So not assuming that people know what you want, but clearly communicating it. We talked about the importance of your social network. So have people around you that you support and they support you back. We talked about really understanding what you want, having that Northern Star or that kind of point ahead of you that you can look up to, or that you get continuously, like, you know what it is that you're doing, and you can always check, does that help me towards the right direction, or is that a step back? What else is it that we need to keep in mind, or what is it that people still forget or ignore in order to succeed in their career?
Great question. So as I mentioned in my book, there's what a chapter I call the foundation for growth. So your atmosphere for growth. And irregardless, you can read all the books in the world. You read my book, you read it 20 times. But if you do not have the atmosphere for growth, the mindset,
there you go.
It doesn't matter what you do. Full stop. This is a beautiful, beautiful, complex, loving, wonderful tool that we don't use.
How do we use it? That would be my follow-up question.
Let's do a very skim on the surface of a little bit about neuroscience and neuroplasticity and the ability to design your outcomes. So your inputs are your outcomes, basically. We have to be intentional about that. Number one, what are your inputs? Are you surrounded by negative people? Are you listening to negative things? What is it that you are soaking up that is shifting or translating into your mindset? And how is that serving you, right? We have to be cognizant of that. That's one thing. This is very high level, okay? And the reason why I talk about mindset and why it's so important is because your mindset drives all of your responses to situations. And it's totally unconscious. So you do not have to think about it, which makes sense. If we had to think about everything every single moment of the day, like it was brand new, that would be a lot to ask. So of course our brains create what we call automatic programs. But oftentimes those automatic programs build up systematic and drift over time. And it may not necessarily end up being a true or helpful or beneficial. There might be some negative labels, false identifications, bad habits, and some of them we identify with as a part of ourselves. Like, take for example, I know I'm very impatient. And you swipe it under the rug because it's a part of who you are. But guess what? There's a lot of people who are super irritated about the fact that you're impatient.
Yeah. Does it serve you? Or would it make sense to get rid of that belief or perception of yourself and work on this impatience? And could that maybe lead to the next step in your career?
Mindset is everything. If, like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And why is that? Well, it's because, one, it's automatic. We don't think about it. It's programmed into our brain. What we think is then what we believe is what we become. I'll give you an example. Let's just say you're focusing on something. You want to buy a new vehicle, or you'd like to buy a new vehicle, and suddenly you see that vehicle everywhere. Your brain is a highly advanced filter. So whatever mindset you have established, your brain also always constantly looks for proof of that being a correct way to be, which can be dangerous. So I highly recommend that when you think about what you want to achieve in your life and your career, you ask yourself, number one, what negative labels do I have about that? So how do I feel about that? What does it make me feel? What comes up? Do I see any roadblocks? Do I think, I'd like to do, but I can't because right? What excuses are you making? And is that serving you or not? And are your habits serving you or not? So one of the things I talk about in my book is that atmosphere for growth. How to set that foundation appropriately, so then you can evolve and be whoever you want to be. You truly can. You have so much. We have neuroplasticity well into advanced age, which is the ability to fire and wire new neurons and develop habits. It's a wonderful thing. We have to be able to leverage it. And I do give you some tools by which to do so in the book.
Yeah, but that's what people are going to say. It's difficult. It's hard. I've done it for so many years. But guess what? If you have a good enough reason And if you have an accountability partner, you can change, but the reason needs to be a great one. Because if you're not convinced, or if you're comfy where you are, and I don't know, and whatever, then everything is going to stay the same. So if you want the external world to change, you need to change your internal world, correct?
Yes. And all true change starts inside. And it's funny, my friend, Dr. Rob Pennington, says, I believe we're here to put on this earth to change the world. But if you can't do that, then change yourself first, right? And then it will influence the change around you. And that's very true, because just to give you a high level overview, when I had my career pivot, it literally changed my life for the better. I cannot say enough about that, because from that career pivot, so many opportunities opened for me. I mean, talk about neuroplasticity off the charts. I was learning new things. I was opening my mind up new concepts. And because of that, it changed my life for the better. I was able to ditch all these old career myths that were holding me back, like, being handcuffed to this thing. And I was living to these set of expectations were totally false and not even designed by me anyway.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Are we living to our expectations or someone else's or society? What's really going on there? I mean, there's a whole host of things. We won't get into that right now. But, really understanding, what is it that I can set myself free from?
Yeah, I fully agree. Then another aspect that I wanted to talk about today, because we also slowly need to come to an end, was the first 3 steps that we can take to unlock our potential for more impact, influence, and income. You already said that we need to work on our mindset. We need to be aware about the people that we spend time with, the input or the information that we soak up, or that we confront ourselves with, that we read, that we consume, that we watch, however you want to say that. What are 3 concrete steps that I can take as somebody who's ready to get his or her career to the next level, to grow? Give us something tangible that we can implement literally today.
Awesome. First of all, get feedback. We do not grow unless we get feedback. All of my clients get feedback in some form or fashion, and that can be something simple as a blind survey you send out to people that know and work with you, or that can be something more complex, like a formal 360-degree review if there's something provided through your workplace. But it's important to understand how you are perceived by the world, because like I mentioned before, we can touch, feel, smell our own intent inside of our brains, but nobody else can see that, right? Nobody else can interact with it. They can only interact with the actions, and sometimes those don't quite mesh. So that's the first thing, is to understand how you are perceived. Are there some roadblocks? And oftentimes they are, based in your presence. How you're showing up matters. So getting feedback into that and insights is tremendously helpful, because then you're able to take that feedback, pick one item, not 5.
Very true.
Very true. Not 5 or 10, just one. The top thing that you see the most of, or the lowest score, or however you work that feedback survey. Pick that one thing and work on that. Right? Develop a plan around that. Develop, first of all, awareness. So you've got your feedback, you got your one thing, develop awareness. Right? So awareness, when do I do this thing? Is it a habit, like interrupting people? Or one of my clients had a habit of venting. She's in a leadership position and she vented. Well, what she didn't realize is that kind of impacted her team negatively, and then they started complaining a lot. So, by the way,
dramatically said.
People emulate you, just so you know. Anyway, so feedback, right? Pick the one thing, develop awareness, and sometimes that's just about stop doing whatever it is. For my client, all she had to do is stop venting. Not hard.
No, it's not. And we are very often so busy, or so in a autopilot mode, for lack of a better expression, that we just don't realize it. And once somebody said it, and you then observe yourself, and you maybe, I know these cute exercises of, or just get a jar, and whenever you do that, you throw in a bean, or you throw in, I don't know, a coin or something.
Make it money, because if it's not money, it doesn't stick.
There you go. There you go. And when you see that at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, or at the end of a month, this is, I don't know, it's painful, it's irritating, but it's a wake-up call. And especially when you do something self-harming or something negative, when you see that, how much harm you're creating for yourself or for others, and you see it, you don't, yeah, that's what other people say. For me personally, that inspires me or motivates me so much more to change, because now it's obvious. It's not something that other people say, it's, I have actually observed it, and I don't want to live that way. I believe I can do better. I believe I can be nicer to others, to my colleagues, to myself. And once you then change that, it changes everything around you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just amazing how small yet significant shifts can make a world of difference, a total transformation. And in 9 months, I mean, did you really think I reinvented myself? No, of course not. I mean, the Phoenix Rising approach sounds dramatic and wonderful, but in reality, it's just not feasible. It's a little silly. It's a lot of time and energy. We're all busy people. Yeah. And one of the wonderful things about what I share in my book, anybody can do it. Yeah. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, anything. It's a roadmap with some humor thrown in to get you where you are, from where you are today to where you want to be. And also along the way, help release some of that negative baggage, that head trash that's just getting in our way. Absolutely. Of being and showing up as a wonderful, bright, shining star. I know you are.
Where can we find the book?
You can find the book at coachurban.com and navigate to books. It will be available this Wednesday, or you can go to upsolutions.net/books, same place, same difference. This Wednesday is the launch. So the book is available this Wednesday. Woohoo! You can also get it on Amazon this Wednesday, Kindle. It's also what I made is a open source, so you can watch it on any electronic device. You don't have to have a Kindle. I think that's just silly. I want to share this with the world, and it's just a transformational journey, and it's easy, it's accessible. It's not complex, not 20,000 steps, and you have to get up at 5:30 in the morning. Although if that's your thing, that's fine if you want to do that. There's no rituals involved. And it's just a great journey, and I share with you also some client success stories along the way to help you understand, hey, maybe that's me.
Wonderful. Yeah, that makes it so much more relatable. And congrats on the book. I'm super excited for you. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for designing some space in your fully packed calendar, for sharing your wisdom with us. Is there anything else that is close to your heart that we forgot, or that we didn't, that we didn't give enough space?
I think we covered a lot. There's a lot to absorb, and it's been a deep pleasure, Dr. Natalia, to be on your live show. And it's a deep pleasure sharing this space with all of you that's tuning in today. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for all the feedback. I'm seeing the comments, and some of you are very insightful individuals, so you're a great start. Here's the one thing I would leave you with. You all of you, all of us, all of you have a lot more impact than you give yourself credit for. In fact, even the most reserved person who doesn't even like leaving their house, and these days it's almost hard to do that anyway, will impact up to 20,000 people in their lifetime.
What? That's insane.
We all have so much more influence. The challenge here is, ladies and gentlemen, we aren't intentional with it. So we're not leveraging that. Right? So
wow, something to reflect on. So once again, thank you so much. Erin, and for everybody who was here today. And if you enjoyed this LinkedIn Live, if you watched it on LinkedIn or on YouTube and you say, wow, that's something that I can't keep for myself. I have this friend, I have this colleague, I have a family member, somebody who needs to be aware of this, somebody who listens to this and then feels heard or seen or understood, who can get inspired, empowered. Please share this interview with that person. Repost this interview or reshare it, whatever. Don't keep it for yourself. We all just heard we can have such a huge, amazing impact on people. When this interview, this conversation helped you, share it with others, make their day as well. And as always, all the best, fingers crossed, implement what you have learned, and we see each other in the next LinkedIn Live.